Compared to the armored vehicles mass-produced by the giants of the military industry, Italian tanks made in the middle of World War II looked pretty pale. The resource and technology scarcity that began in the interwar period meant bad news for the mechanized units of the kingdom. Italian crews could only dream of vehicles like the Soviet IS tanks or the German Tigers. The Ansaldo and Fiat companies were looking for a way to create a more modern machine for the army. But the only vehicle that reached mass production was a light, heavy tank called the P-40. Its first mentions date back to the late 1930s. Italian combat vehicles of the time had clear disadvantages. Riveted hulls and turrets, modest armament, and low mobility were among the biggest flaws. However, actual work only began in 1940, when Mussolini ordered the development of a heavy tank with a mass of 20 tons. You can see why this machine would only be considered heavy within the classification used by Italy at the time. The Soviet KV or the British Churchill were around 40 tons, but Italy couldn't even think of tanks with that mass. Their engineers had to account for load limits of pontoon bridges and the industrial capacities of the nation. Soon after the start of development, the project exceeded the original limits, but not by too much. Its expected mass grew from 20 to 26 tons. The military wanted a vehicle with a 47mm cannon and 3 machine guns. The tank would accelerate to 40 kilometers an hour using a diesel engine with 330 horsepower. The earliest prototype looked like the M13 tanks, only armed with a divisional howitzer from 1935. However, 1941 brought a dramatic change to the development process when Italy got a chance to study a trophy T-34 tank. The Soviet machine motivated the engineers to rework their design of the P-40. The Ansaldo design team thickened the armor and sloped the plates much more. In order to improve protection and simplify the design, they even removed the machine gun mounts. Next, the tank received a new long-barreled cannon based on a 1937 howitzer, which was much more powerful. Work on the P-40 was almost complete by the spring of 1943, but even before mass production could begin, Italy surrendered, and by the fall, a civil war had begun. Ansaldo factories in the north were controlled by Germany, and Germany ordered a few dozen P-40 tanks for the local police forces. Most of these tanks never saw action. A few of the vehicles were transferred to the Leoncello armored group of the Italian Social Republic, but found no use. Shortly before Italy's defeat, they were abandoned and captured by the Allies. And that's the story of the light, heavy tank. Neither the Italians nor anyone else could find a use for it in the late years of the Second World War.